Hello, everyone. This presentation is prepared to be informative to potential or existing participants in the AOCS Laboratory Proficiency Program. In this presentation, I'm going to dive into details on how a report looks like in our Laboratory Proficiency Program. The Laboratory Proficiency Program is one of the services offered by the Technical Services Department of AOCS. The Technical Services Department of AOCS offers the official methods and recommended practices of the AOCS, the proficiency testing programs, and the certified reference materials. Among the proficiency testing programs, the Certified Labs program focuses on soy meal testing. The Laboratory Proficiency Program has about 40 different series. The Approved Chemists program and the Quality Reference Materials are extensions from the Laboratory Proficiency Program. From a participant's perspective of the Laboratory Proficiency Program, the process goes through 5 steps: register, receive samples, test samples, submit samples, and review report. In this presentation, I'm going to focus on the last part, review report. This report is the report that's published every quarter. The report has 4 parts: test result summary, summary of z-scores, chart of z-scores, and kernel density plot. You could review your submitted results in the test result summary, and you can learn how well you did from the summary of z-scores. The chart of z-scores and kernel density plot are provided for better visual comparison of the results across labs. Let's first look at the first part of the report, test result summary. Here is an example page of the test result summary. When reading the report, the first thing I recommend to do is to read the top left corner and the top right corner of the report. At the top left corner, there's the report title. At the top right corner, there is a sample name. When you participate in more than one series, or when there are more than one samples in a series, reading the top left and the top right corners can keep you from reading the wrong report. The next thing to do is to locate your result in your report. First, go down the first column on the left to locate your analyst number, and then go across to find your result. The result for each constituent is assigned 1 column. To sum it up, in the first part of the report, your submitted test results are listed. The second part of the report is the summary of z-scores. This is where the z-scores are presented. In this part, there are z-scores and also some other summary statistics. As always, you can find the sample name on the top right corner. Let's first look at the z-scores. To find your z-score, go down the first column on the left to locate your analyst number, and then go across to find the z-score of each constituent. Say if you find a z-score of 1.23, what does that mean? The absolute value of the z-score, when it's less than 2, it is considered to be acceptable. When the absolute value of a z-score is between 2 and 3, it is considered to give an warning signal. When the absolute value of a z-score is greater than 3, it is considered to give an action signal. In the report, when the absolute values of z-scores are between 2 and 3, they are highlighted in yellow. When the absolute values of z-scores are greater than 3, they are highlighted in red. So why does z-scores have such implications? When the measurements are carried out correctly and generate normally distributed results, the z-scores are normally distributed with a mean of 0 and standard deviation of 1. The absolute value of the z-score tells you how many standard deviations you are away from the mean. Only about 0.3% of these scores are expected to fall outside the range of -3 to 3, and about 5% of these scores are expected to fall outside the range of -2 to 2. The implications of the z-scores are consistent with its calculation. The z-score is calculated by taking the difference between the test result and the assigned value and dividing that difference by the standard deviation. In the report, the test result is listed in the first part of the report. The assigned value is the consensus value. The standard deviation is the target standard deviation. Both the consensus value and the target standard deviation are determined according to ISO 13528. And how about the other summary statistics in the report? Among the summary statistics, all the ones circled in blue are calculated from the ones circled in green. We have discussed about the consensus value and the target standard deviation. For example, the relative target standard deviation is the target standard deviation divided by the consensus value. The lower limit of tolerance is the consensus value minus 2 standard deviations. To sum it up, in the second part of the report, the summary of these scores are provided, and they are useful to monitor the performance. The third part of the report is the chart of these scores. The chart of these scores essentially is presenting the z-scores provided in the second part of the report in a chart. In the chart, the x-axis is the z-score. The y-axis is the analyst number. The chart of these scores makes the comparison of these scores across labs straightforward. To find your triangle in the chart, go down the column at the left of the chart to locate your analyst number, and then go across to find the triangle. The triangles in the chart are coded in different colors for their different implications. Blue for acceptable, yellow for warning, and red for action. The greater the magnitude of the z-score, the longer the length of the triangle. To sum it up, in this third part of the report, the chart of z-score is provided. The fourth part of the report is the kernel density plot. The kernel density plot is describing the distribution of the data set. In the plot, the x-axis is the test result. The y-axis is the probability density. At the peak of the plot is where the values are concentrated. The kernel density plot provides a visual summary of the submitted results, and it includes information from the first and the second part of the report. For example, the green cross here you see at the bottom of the plot is where the consensus value is, and each circle on the plot is associated with at least one value reported. At where the values are concentrated, especially at the peak of the plot, because so many values land at the same location on the plot, one circle may represent multiple values. The color band at the bottom of the plot is coded similarly as the triangles in the chart of z-scores. Blue for acceptable, yellow for warning, and red for action. To sum it up, the first part of the report provides graphs to describe the data distribution. Now we have viewed the 4 parts of the quarterly report. The submitted results are provided in the test result summary. The performance measurement, the z-scores, are provided in the summary of z-scores. The cross-lab comparison of z-scores are made easier by the chart of z-scores. And the data distribution is presented by the kernel density plot. In addition to this report that we have just viewed, there is also the proficiency report. The proficiency report is published every year. The report we have just viewed is published every quarter. At the end of each program year, the proficiency report will become available. The proficiency report provides a year-end summary of the performance over the year. And it determines if an analyst is qualified to apply for the approved chemist status. The approved chemist program is an extension of the laboratory proficiency program. The proficiency report has 2 parts: the proficiency report and the ranking report. The first part is the proficiency report. In the proficiency report, there is the combined score, the number of missing constituents, and the root mean square z-scores of each constituent. The combined score is a summary of performance over the year. It is the weighted average of the root mean square z-scores of each constituent. If an analyst has a combined score of less than 1.4 and is reporting no missing constituent, the analyst is qualified for the approved chemist status. In the ranking report, all the analysts are listed in order of increasing combined score. Analysts reporting no missing constituents are listed in the ranking report. Therefore, if an analyst listed in the ranking report has a combined score of less than 1.4, the analyst is qualified to apply for the approved chemist status. We have viewed the report and the proficiency report, and we have introduced what contents are available in each part of the report. Thank you for your attention, and please share your comments or questions.
Thank you, Xin. That was wonderful. So we do have time for questions. Should you have any, please write them in either the question box or the chat box, and we will get those answered for you. I'll give everybody a moment in case you are typing. Okay, Xin, can you explain again how you determine the consensus value?
Okay, so the way the consensus value is determined is not described in detail in this presentation, and it is determined according to ISO 528. And the process is something called robust statistics. And it is determined in a way that the outliers will have minimized impact on the determined location of the central tendency. So we know that we could use the average, we could use the mean, and here we use a way of determining the consensus value that minimize the outlier impact. So I can, well, if you want, I can refer you to the chapter where the process is discussed, but it's beyond what I can present here in this presentation.
Thank you. How are the statistics treated if they display a bimodal distribution of submitted values?
In situations when bimodal distribution is present, and an investigation is going to take place to look into the reason for the bimodal distribution. For example, if it is because the analysts are using two different methods, and those two different methods created those two center distribution of the results will be treated separately for each method for the analysis. And sometimes the bimodal distribution is indistinguishable, but we can sometimes see the cluster in an area that cannot be separated. We will treat them the same way as the single mode, monomode distribution.
Can you please repeat how the combined score is calculated?
Oh, the combined score is the weighted average of the root mean square z-scores of each constituent. So when you submit the result, there is a z-score associated with each result. But we have 4 quarters. The 4 quarters results for each constituent is combined. It's combined to the root mean square z-scores. And now the combined score is the weighted average of the root mean square z-scores of every constituent.
Thank you. How does it affect statistics if I mistakenly enter a 0 for the missing constituent section?
Generally, a result entered as 0 will not impact the program as a whole because the outlier will be treated properly in the statistical analysis process. But the result 0 will impact your eligibility to the approved chemist program status, because you entering as 0 in the report, if the consensus value is far away from 0, that 0 you entered will be treated, will be calculated to bear that large z-score, and that will negatively impact your eligibility for the approved chemist status.
So if you have multiple analysts, we would need to sign up for multiple samples to get them approved status. So I'm assuming that the question here is, would the analysts have to be individually enrolled in the series that they would like to be approved chemists for?
Yes. The program is designed that the submitted result is from one analyst, and it's then an assessment of one analyst's performance over the year. So if you have multiple analysts, for them individually to be accredited approved chemist status, they need to be in the program individually.
When rel limit of reproducibility is above 100%, can you still use this result in your validation work?
Can you repeat the question?
And I may have, it is when REL limit of reproducibility is above 100%, can you still use this result in your validation work?
Oh, I would recommend cautious use of that result. Well, you can see that for almost every result we have, not every, for most of the results we have the summary statistics presented, but all of the, but only some of them is telling us that the consensus value is from a measurement that is really generating close clustered results. For some results, you can see the results are really scattered. And for those results, I would recommend caution when you use the results for any other purposes.
How would I explain a result that was 0.27 with a consensus value of 0.22 with a standard deviation of 0.3 with a z-score result greater than 2? And I know that's a lot of numbers, so that might be difficult for you to.
So yes, thank you. I get your idea. Is that when you have a consensus value that's really small, and you have a standard deviation that's in a comparable scale to the consensus value, and your value, in that case, the entire set of data is not recommended to be used for the assessment of your performance, because that particular measurement is not generating a result that is not generating results that's closely clustered and performing as a normally distributed data set. So that entire data set, the performance measurements, the z-scores from that entire data set should not be taken as an assessment of the analyst.
Okay, thank you, Xin. Another question. They have a question that isn't really statistical, but logistical. Our lab does a lot of AOCS testing, and we have a lot of times when we could use a bit more sample for appropriate testing. Is it possible to get extra sample for programs?
Yes. So the Qualified Reference Materials Program is an extension from the Laboratory Proficiency Program. And the materials that's available in the Qualified Reference Materials are the same materials that's provided in the Laboratory Proficiency Program. You can get additional materials when you go on the website and locate the Qualified Reference Materials and look for the materials that you particularly would like to have.
Okay, thank you. And I'll make sure in the follow-up where the recording is sent, we'll put a link to that as well, so it's easy to find on the web, easy for everybody to find on the website. What is the minimum number of analyst value submissions in order for that parameter to be statistically analyzed?
Right now, we're operating with 8 minimum analysts for each constituent.
Okay. How much should I weigh AOCS sample for soy moisture analysis if the temperature is 135 degrees C and if the sample goes through a 1 millimeter grinding?
Your question is very particular to the measurement you are trying to do, and I would recommend following the method. So if your method has a definition of the working condition for the measurement to take place, like what temperature, what grinding procedure to use, that's the way to do, follow the method.
Okay. That was the last question that I saw. I believe we got to all of them. I'll just give a moment. If I missed your question, please retype it. Or if you have an additional question, I'm going to give just one more moment for that. And thank you, Xin, again for the presentation as well as answering everyone's questions. And just to follow up, we will send a copy of the recording. And we just had another question come in asking if there was a technical contact for reporting questions. And Xin, should I assume that that is then you?
Yes, I could be contacted for that, yes.
Okay, so I will make sure that Xin's full contact information is also in the follow-up email, just so that you may easily have access to that if you do have questions in the future. Okay, and we have a few more questions now. Will the Q4 of the current proficiency series be used for the calculation of analyst ranking?
So right now, our position is the Q4 results will be omitted from the performance measurement of the analyst. So it's not going to be included.
Okay. And Xin, you are getting several thank yous, just so you know, and that it was excellent, and I agree.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time in giving the presentation as well as answering the questions here. As soon as the video is processed, I'll send that out to all the registered attendees, along with links to the quality reference materials, and provide Xin's direct contact information should you have follow-up questions. So thank you again, Xin, and thank you everybody for taking the time to join us today. I do hope that this was helpful, and we appreciate your participation in the Laboratory Proficiency Program. So with that, we will close. Thanks again and have a wonderful day.
Thank you all.